We start with the newest Forbes valuations, and for that, as always, we go to my co-host, Michael Ozanian. It's the NHL valuations. What is the big headline, Mike?
The big headline here, Bob, is that the New York Rangers and the Montreal Canadiens have leapfrogged the Toronto Maple Leafs, who for years were the #1 team in the NHL in terms of value. The Rangers are now #1, followed by the Canadiens, for the very simple fact that the Rangers have had a lot of playoff hockey, went to the finals 2 years ago. They lost to the Kings. Last year, lost in the semis to the Lightning. Each playoff game, depending on how far you go, represents between $1 million to $3 million in operating income. As for the Canadiens, they saw their new local TV deal kick in last year, averages $64 million a year, almost 3 times the previous deal.
Now, what about the Chicago Blackhawks? They've won 3 of the last 6 cups.
Yeah, well, I guess that, they're the closest thing to probably a dynasty we've had since the Edmonton Oilers in the late 80s. And yet, I think if you look at the playoffs, just those 3 years where they won the cup, you're talking about $75 million thereabouts in operating income to the team. That's why they're one of the most profitable teams in the NHL.
There are 7 teams in Canada. Only 1 jumped in value, though. Why is that?
Well, if you go back to 2 years ago and then come forward to today, the value of the Canadian dollar has fallen about 20% versus the U.S. dollar. And the reason why that hurts Canadian teams is they take in their revenue in local currency, Canadian dollars.
Right.
They have to pay their players in U.S. dollars. And also, when you look at the valuations, there's a decline there because of the currency as well. It's not so much the economics of how popular, let's say the Winnipeg Jets are and stuff like that. It's strictly a function of currency.
So did the NHL valuations key at all on the league's new deal with Major League Baseball Advanced Media?
That was the one big thing that happened this year. They started last season the new big deal with Rogers, that massive Canadian TV deal, but we knew that was happening, so we factored that in. Last year's valuations is why they went up about 18%, I think. This year, the biggest thing was that deal with BAM. BAM's taking over the digital rights of the NHL. They're going to pay the NHL $100 million a year over 6 years.
And there's an equity stake there as well, right?
You're absolutely right, Bob. I think that could be the most valuable part of this deal. BAM is going to give the NHL between 7 and 10% of its tech arm, which they may take public. And if they do, the NHL could reap between $3 billion and $5 billion.
Big money. All right.